Super-eruptions may give a year's warning before they blow. In other words, they may have a short fuse. And we have two of the world's super volcanoes on the west coast of the United States. Long Valley Caldera, which last had a super eruption 760,000 years ago and is inflating, and as well as Yellowstone supervolcano in Wyoming, and that is also inflating, and you'll see the past videos I just posted today. So super eruptions may give a year's warning before they blow. They have a short fuse. This is by David Salisbury, Vanderbilt University on FUSES.org. Super eruptions, volcanic events large enough to devastate the entire planet, give only about a year's warning before they blow. Not hundreds of years or tens of years, but he says a year. This is the conclusion of the new microscopic analysis of quartz crystals in pumice taken from the Bishop Tuff in eastern California, which is the site of the super eruption that formed Long Valley Caldera 760,000 years ago. The study described in the paper The Year Leading to the Super Eruption by Guilherme Gualda, Associate Professor of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Vanderbilt University, and Stephen Sutton at the University of Chicago, published recently in the journal PLOS ONE. They said the evolution of a giant super eruption feeding magma body is characterized by events taking place at a variety of timescales, said Gualda. Tens of thousands of years are needed to prime the crust to generate sufficient eruptible magma, and once established, these melt-rich giant magma bodies are unstable features that last for only centuries to few millennia. Now we have shown that the onset of the process of decompression, which releases the gas bubbles that power the eruption, start less than a year before the eruption. Gualda and Sutton analyzed dozens of small quartz crystals from the Bishop Tuff. Previous investigations of quartz crystals from several super eruptions, including Long Valley Caldera of California, have noted that they have distinctive surface rims. These studies concluded that the rims formed in less than a century before the eruption. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. The new study uses a more accurate method for measuring rim growth times pinned on variations in the concentration of titanium in the crystal. Titanium is one of the few impurities that is incorporated into quartz in appreciable amounts, and it diffuses fast enough to permit probing of timescales as short as minutes. However, it's extremely difficult to measure the small levels of titanium involved at sufficient spatial resolution. So the researchers established that the concentration of titanium in quartz directly correlates with the amount of light produced when a material is bombarded by electrons, an effect called cathodoluminescence. This allowed them to use cathodoluminescent images to make high-resolution measurements of variations in titanium concentration, and based on this to determine rim growth times and growth rates. Maximum rim growth time spanned from approximately 1 minute to 35 years, with a median of approximately 4 days. More than 70% of rim growth times are less than 1 year, showing that quartz rims have mostly grown in the days to months prior to the eruption of the supervolcano. Growth took place under conditions of high supersaturation, suggesting that rim growth marks the onset of decompression and the transition from pre-eruptive to syn-eruptive conditions, the paper summarizes. According to Gualda, the decompression period would likely be accompanied by the expansion of the magma body, which should have detectable effects on the Earth's surface. While more work is needed to understand what exactly the signs at the surface would be, the study suggests that signs of an impending super-eruption would start to be felt within a year of eruption, and they would intensify as the eruption neared, of course. Very large eruptions, including super-eruptions, have taken place in a number of places worldwide in the recent geological past. The Taupo volcanic zone in New Zealand was the site of the most recent super-eruption, the Oruani eruption 26,500 years ago, and it included deposits from more than a dozen very large eruptions that took place in the last couple of million years. Campi Flegrei in Italy, near Naples. Naples sits between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius. So it produced a very large eruption 40,000 years ago. Indonesia was the site of the Toba super-eruption in Sumatra 75,000 years ago, and the Tambora eruption in 1815. In the United States, Yellowstone has experienced 3 super-eruptions over the last 2 million years. In light of this evidence, it seems inevitable that another super-eruption will strike the Earth in the future. As far as we can determine, none of these places currently house the type of melt-rich giant magma body needed to produce a super-eruption, Golet explains. However, they are places where super-eruptions have happened in the past, so are more likely to happen there in the future. Golet and Sutton's study provides new insights into the timescales over which the initiation of such a potentially civilization-ending event would take place. I mean, that means it's an extinction level event, obviously. And then going to the new geospeedometer confirms super-eruptions have short fuses. This is again by Vanderbilt University. Repeatedly throughout Earth's history, the giant pools of magma greater than 100 cubic miles in volume have formed a few miles below the surface. They're the sources of super-eruptions, gigantic volcanic outbursts that throw 100 times more superheated gas, ash, and rock into the atmosphere than run-of-the-mill eruptions, enough to blanket continents and plunge the world into decade-long volcanic winters. Now, a team of geologists have developed a new geospeedometer that they argue can help resolve this controversy by providing direct measurements of how long the most explosive types of magma exist as melt-rich bodies of crystal-poor magma before they erupt, and they applied their new technique to 2 super-eruption sites and a pair of very large eruptions and found that it took them no more than 500 years to move from formation to eruption. These results are described in the article Melt Inclusion Shapes, Timekeepers of Short-Lived Giant Magma Bodies, and it appears in Geology Journal. Geologists have developed a number of different timekeepers for volcanic deposits. The fact that these techniques measure different processes and have different resolutions has contributed to this lack of consensus. Our new method indicates that the process can take place within historically relevant spans of time, said Guillermo Gualda, associate professor at Vanderbilt University, who was director of the project. The method was developed as a part of the doctoral thesis of Ayla Pamuku, who is now a postdoctoral researcher at Brown and Princeton universities. The hotspot under Yellowstone National Park has produced several super-eruptions in the past. The measurements that have been made indicate that this magma body does not currently have a high enough percentage of melt to produce a super-eruption, but now we know that when or if it does reach such a state, we will only have a few hundred years to prepare ourselves for the consequences. And how do you prepare? You really just can't. So they applied their geospeedometer to 4 large eruptions, the Bishop Tuff in California of the Long Valley Caldera, the Taupo volcano of New Zealand that erupted 27,000 years ago, and the Uhakuri Mamaku pair of high-volume eruptions that took place in Taupo volcano in New Zealand again 240,000 years ago. They said, our current method will also work on smaller volcanic systems as long as they erupt magmas that contain quartz crystals, said Pamuku. We're also confident that we can adapt these techniques to work with other minerals, which will allow us to make similar time-scale calculations for other types of magmas and volcanoes, like the low silica basalts commonly erupting from the Hawaii volcanoes. And again, this was from Vanderbilt University on FUSES.org. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.